when you dream, that your brain takes you on this exploration, right? And it looks at various social scenarios, for example, that evoke emotions in you. So it takes, Dr. Peterson and put him in a room with Kim and Joe and see how he reacts. If the reaction is not an emotionally evocative one, it will literally take you and show you another scenario until it hits on a scene that evokes your emotion, that gets you riled up, and then it explores.
Right, so it has to be okay.
It has to have that element, and then it will go down that path more and explore it more. It'll say, this is interesting.
Okay, I see. So it presents scenarios.
Exactly.
Until one evokes a limbic
emotion.
reaction.
Absolutely.
Now, but is it also searching for emotional reactions that are primarily negative, or is it intensity?
Not necessarily. So it does. There's a huge dopaminergic aspects to dreams. So it's been shown that if you have a lesion to a part of the brain, the inferior parietal lobule, again, it's a region just below the superior parietal lobule. It's involved in creating images, but also so if you have a stroke there, for example, you won't dream. Or the mesolimbic dopamine centers. This is a fancy name for the part of the brain where you have dopamine going to the prefrontal cortex. If you have a lesion there, you won't dream as well. So bliss and dopamine, as well as images, is involved deeply in
Okay,
in
so
dreams.
it's emotional intensity and valence.
Intensity, valence, yeah.
Right,
so
but it's tilted somewhat towards the negative.
Somewhat
we
towards the
are
negative.
Generally, as human beings, tilted somewhat toward the negative.
Absolutely,
right?
yeah.
So okay, so your brain is playing with various scenarios.
Absolutely.
And if one evokes an emotional response, so you see, the thing is, if it evokes a negative emotional response, that would indicate that your adaptation is weak at that point, right? Because you're much more likely to be anxious about a situation that you haven't mastered.
Right.
Okay, so you could imagine that the evocation of negative emotion is indication of weakness in conceptual structure.
Yep.
Okay, so now the dream is playing with various scenarios around that evocation point.
Yeah. So it's very interesting. So one thing that I want to make clear as well, it's that, obviously, as you know, there's a corpus callosum that there's a bridge between the two hemispheres, allowing the two hemispheres to communicate, right? So you have the right hemisphere and the left hemisphere. So these hemisphere, if you literally cut it, you'll have two consciousness in one person, right? So it seems like dreams is also right hemispheric dominance for another reason, because the things you will see in your dreams are like poetry, right? It's visual metaphors that you can't explain in language, right? So it's like going through an art museum and looking at things, but in a very poetically, beautifully, non-language way, right? So you can't describe it necessarily. And obviously the left hemisphere, the regions of the Wernicke and stuff like that, is involved in language and understanding language. But it seems like like the poetic aspect of dreams is very much a right hemispheric thing as well.
That should be associated with both the novelty routinization dichotomy. So the question is, well, how do you approach something that's novel? Well, if it's novel, if it produces anomaly, if you don't understand it, you haven't encapsulated it in language. It's not routinized enough so that you have a propositional description of it. So you could imagine that during the day, when you're conscious, you're running well-routinized, propositionalized routines.
Right.
But some of them don't work out as well as others.
Right.
Okay, so now imagine the right hemisphere is sitting in the background mapping the failures. Okay, so now you have like a collection of failures. It's something like that. Now it's nighttime, you shut down the propositional side and you open up the metaphoric side, and it's starting to explore that land. It's exploring, I think it's exploring unexplored territory, fundamentally. That's the best way to conceptualize it. But it's also like it's the same as the landscape of insufficient adaptation, right? And that should be associated with negative emotion.
Right.
And now the question would be, what would be the utility of those metaphoric fantasies? Well, part of that's, okay, so imagine that around any perception, there's a cloud of connotations, right, that are first order. We already talked about that. So like a first order connotation for you would, if I saw you, would obviously be male, right? So, and then imagine that outside of that, there's second order connotations and third order, and finally things that are so distinct that they don't seem to bear any conceptual relationship.
Right.
Well, as you open up the metaphoric landscape, that connotation width should expand.
Right.
And then you could imagine that what you're trying to do is to explore a new network of connotations that would map the territory more effectively, right?
Yeah, I think what is also interesting about dreams and that whole thing is that it seems to tap into a circuitry that's more mystical than the circuitry that we normally tap into. By mystical, I mean, it seems like some of the receptors involved in mystical experiences, when you take psilocybin and things like mescaline and DMT and stuff like that, the serotonin 2A receptors. So one theory actually talks about how, so obviously serotonin is another neurochemical in the brain. That the part of the brain that produces that, the dorsal nucleus, also shuts down its production of serotonin. So you don't have serotonin in your dreams either, in REM sleep. And so you end up in this space without noradrenaline and without serotonin. But it seems like for some reason that the serotonin 2A receptors become dialed up. So that part of the serotonin 2 receptors become tickled for some reasons. And sometimes—
And that is also happening in a psilocybin experience.
It also happened in psilocybin experiences.
Right, so that accounts in part for the overlap between the mystical experience and the dream experience.
In the mystical experiences and the dream experiences. So there's something there that's hypercosmic in dreams that you can't, it's ineffable, you can't describe it in language, and it's highly personal and it has salience for you. So one thing that I notice about dreams is a lot of people come and talk to me about their dreams all the time. They'll go, Baland, I had this dream, I saw this and that, and they're very emotional about it, and it's highly personal and cosmic, right? But, I kind of go, oh, that's interesting, but it's not really that interesting. But it has that significance for you as a person. And that's kind of about the dream thing. It has personal salience, kind of the type of personal salience you can get from a psilocybin experience.